My mother looked me in the eyes at her own wedding venue and told me I didn't belong there. What she didn't know was that the building hosting her celebration was no longer owned by the family she trusted. It belonged to me. I still remember the sound of those words. Not because they were loud. They weren't. My mother had always been good at making painful things sound reasonable. She didn't scream. She didn't create a scene. She simply adjusted the diamond bracelet on her wrist, looked around the room full of relatives and guests, and said quietly, "Emma, you should leave before you embarrass yourself." For a moment, nobody moved. The music continued playing. The waiters continued carrying silver trays. The flowers my mother had chosen for the wedding were still perfectly arranged across the tables. Everything looked beautiful, almost too beautiful, like a picture hiding a crack in the wall. And standing there in that expensive ballroom, wearing a simple navy dress, I realized something. After 9 years of being erased from my own family, my mother was still trying to remove me from a place that legally belonged to me. But she didn't know that yet. She didn't know the documents had already been signed. She didn't know the ownership had already changed. And she definitely didn't know that the person she had spent years calling a failure had quietly become the person holding the future of everything she loved. But before I tell you what happened at that wedding, you need to understand how I became the daughter my own mother wanted to forget. Welcome back to Reality Drama Story, where family secrets unfold and quiet decisions change everything. If you're new here, drop a comment and subscribe. Now let's get into it. My name is Emma Carter, and for most of my childhood, I believed my family was unbreakable. My father, Michael Carter, was the kind of man who believed buildings were more than walls. He used to tell me, "Emma, anyone can build a structure, but only patient people can build something that lasts." My father owned a small medical clinic in Ohio. It wasn't a huge business. There were no fancy signs, no luxury offices, just a small building with old wooden chairs, a coffee machine that barely worked, and a waiting room where people knew my father's name. Patients trusted him. Neighbors respected him. And to me, he was the strongest person I knew. Every Saturday morning, he would take me to the clinic. I was only 10 years old, but he would hand me a small notebook and say, "Write down everything you see. Someday, you might understand why people matter more than money." I didn't understand back then. I thought business was about numbers, revenue, contracts, assets. But my father knew something I didn't. A business without compassion was just an empty building. For years, our life was simple, until my father got sick. When he passed away, everything changed. The house became quieter, the clinic became colder, and my mother, Linda, became someone I barely recognized. At first, I thought grief had changed her. I tried to understand. I really did. But then 3 months after my father's funeral, she introduced us to Richard Hayes, a successful businessman, confident, charming, the kind of person who always knew what to say when people were watching. He shook my hand and smiled. "Emma, your father built something impressive, but sometimes old things need new leadership." I didn't like that sentence. Not because it was rude, because it sounded like a warning. Over the next few years, Richard slowly started changing everything. The clinic became less about patients, more about profit. The old staff members my father trusted were replaced. Prices increased. The small waiting room became a luxury reception area. My mother told everyone Richard was taking the family business to the next level. But I noticed something. The more successful the clinic became, the less my father's memory seemed to exist. His photographs disappeared. His name was removed from the office wall. Even the wooden chair where he used to sit was gone. I asked my mother about it one evening. "Why did you remove Dad's chair?" She didn't even look up from her phone. "Emma, you need to stop living in the past." Those words stayed with me because I realized something painful. My mother wasn't just replacing furniture. She was replacing history. By the time I turned 24, Richard had convinced my mother that I was a problem. He never openly attacked me. That would have been too obvious. Instead, he planted small ideas. "Emma is too emotional. Emma doesn't understand business. Emma reminds you too much of Michael." That last one was the most powerful, because my mother never admitted it. But hearing my father's name made her uncomfortable. I had studied healthcare management for 4 years. I had worked at different hospitals. I understood numbers, contracts, and operations. But whenever I tried to offer ideas about the family clinic, Richard smiled politely, then ignored me. One night, during a family dinner, everything changed. Richard placed a folder on the table. My mother looked nervous. I remember that detail clearly. She wasn't angry. She was afraid. Richard opened the folder. "Emma, we need to discuss your future." I looked at my mother. Why does that sound like something I won't like? Nobody laughed. Richard pushed a document toward me. It was a separation agreement. He wanted me to give up any claim connected to my father's business. I stared at the papers. Then I looked at my mother. "Mom, did you know about this?" She stayed silent. That silence hurt more than the document, because sometimes the worst betrayal isn't what someone says. It's what they refuse to say. I signed nothing. I stood up. And before I walked away, my mother said the sentence that changed my life forever. "Maybe you should leave this family if you can't accept our decisions." I thought she was angry. I thought she would apologize. I thought tomorrow would be different. But the next morning, my suitcase was sitting outside the front door. 9 years later, I was standing at her wedding, and she was asking me to leave again. Only this time, she had no idea who she was asking to walk away. 9 years before that wedding night, I walked away from my mother's house with one suitcase, a broken heart, and a promise I made to myself. I promised I would never beg someone to choose me, not even my own family. That first year was the hardest. People think losing money is painful. They think losing a home is painful. And yes, those things hurt. But losing your place in someone's heart, that is a different kind of pain. I moved into a small apartment above a closed bakery on the west side of town. The ceiling leaked when it rained. The heater made strange noises every night. The kitchen had only 2 working cabinets. But it was mine. Nobody could tell me I didn't belong there. Nobody could pack my things and put them outside the door. For the first few months, I worked 3 jobs. During the day, I worked as a hospital operations assistant. In the evenings, I helped manage patient records at a private clinic. On weekends, I took business courses online. People around me thought I was trying to prove something. Maybe they were right, but I wasn't trying to prove I was better than my family. I was trying to prove to myself that my father's lessons were still alive inside me. Because every time I felt tired, I remembered his words. "Emma, buildings are not created in one day. The strongest foundations are built when nobody is watching." And nobody was watching. My mother wasn't calling. My relatives weren't checking in. The family that once filled every holiday dinner had completely disappeared. I became a ghost in my own story. But something unexpected happened. The person who had been removed from the family business started learning everything about the business world. I learned contracts. I learned acquisitions. I learned hospital management. I learned how companies survived when others failed. And slowly, very slowly, I started building something. 5 years after leaving home, I received a phone call that changed everything. It was from a lawyer named Daniel Brooks. I had never met him personally, but I knew his name. He was my father's attorney, the man who had handled my father's original business. "Emma Carter?" "Yes. My name is Daniel Brooks. I represent your father's estate." I sat down immediately. Nobody had mentioned my father's estate in years. "What happened?" There was a pause. Then he said, "I think it's time you know what your father actually left behind." That sentence changed my entire understanding of my past. For years, I believed my father had left behind only memories. I was wrong. Daniel explained that before my father died, he created a legal protection agreement, not because he didn't trust my mother, but because he understood people changed when money became involved. My father had placed a portion of his business ownership into a protected trust. The agreement was signed on March 14, 2016. And the most important part was this: if the original family clinic expanded into a larger medical organization, the trust would have the right to purchase controlling interest if certain financial conditions were met. I listened quietly. Then Daniel said the number that shocked me: $12.8 million. I thought I heard him wrong. What? The medical group your family helped build is now valued at approximately $12.8 million. I didn't speak. I just stared at the wall. Because suddenly, every moment from my past looked different. My father wasn't trying to control the future. He was protecting it. And the person who had been pushed away from the family business was actually the person legally connected to its future. But there was one problem. My mother and Richard didn't know. Over the next 2 years, I worked with Daniel and a team of advisors. Quietly, carefully, no announcements, no social media posts, no dramatic confrontation. I learned something important. When you reveal a secret too early, people prepare their defense. But when you wait, people reveal who they really are. And Richard revealed everything. The company had grown, but not because of his brilliant leadership. Behind the scenes, he had been making risky decisions. Large loans, aggressive expansions, unnecessary luxury spending. He was building a beautiful building on a weak foundation. Exactly what my father warned me about. By 2025, the medical group had serious financial pressure. The public image looked successful, but behind closed doors, things were falling apart. And then I received another unexpected message. A wedding invitation. My mother's wedding invitation. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I hadn't spoken to her in 9 years. But there it was. My name, printed on expensive paper. Emma Carter. I almost threw it away. Almost. Then I noticed something. The wedding venue. The location was familiar. Very familiar. It was the new headquarters of Carter Medical Center. The same organization that started from my father's small clinic. The same place my family believed they controlled. I called Daniel. Why would she hold the wedding there? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Emma, I think they don't know what is about to happen. Those words stayed in my mind because I knew something Daniel didn't. My mother wasn't inviting me because she missed me. She wasn't reaching out because she regretted what happened. She invited me because she wanted to show everyone that her family was perfect. She wanted the picture, the beautiful wedding, the successful business, the happy family. But she didn't know the picture was about to change. The wedding day arrived. I remember every detail. The weather was unusually warm for October. The parking lot was filled with luxury cars. There were exactly 186 guests. I counted, not because I was nervous, because I had learned something about important moments. Details matter. My father taught me that. I walked into the ballroom quietly. Nobody noticed me at first. And honestly, I preferred it that way. I watched. I observed. My mother was standing near the entrance wearing a white designer dress. She looked happy. Or at least she looked like someone who wanted people to believe she was happy. Richard was shaking hands with investors, talking about expansion, talking about the future, talking about everything except the problems he had created. Then I heard my name. Not once, not twice, 3 times. People were whispering, "Is that Emma?" I thought she wasn't coming. Why is she here? My mother finally saw me. Her smile disappeared, just for a second, but I saw it. That tiny moment when someone realizes the past they buried has walked back into the room. She approached me slowly. "Emma." I smiled politely. "Hi, Mom." She looked around, making sure people were watching. Then she lowered her voice. "You shouldn't be here." I looked at her. After 9 years, those were the first words she chose. Not, "I missed you." Not, "I'm sorry." Not even, "How are you?" Just, "You shouldn't be here." I wanted to ask why, but I already knew. Because some people don't fear losing you. They fear losing control of the story they created about you. My mother leaned closer. "This is a family event." I calmly answered, "I know." She looked confused. "Then why did you come?" I looked around the room, at the company my father built, at the people celebrating a future they didn't understand. Then I said, "Because I was invited." She shook her head. "You need to leave before Richard sees you." That sentence told me everything. She wasn't protecting me. She was protecting him. And that was when I realized. My mother still had no idea who she was talking to. But the biggest surprise of the night wasn't that my mother wanted me gone. The biggest surprise was what Richard was planning to announce before dinner. And when he stepped onto that stage, he had no idea that his announcement would expose everything. Richard stepped onto the stage at exactly 7:42 p.m. I remember the time because I was watching the clock above the entrance. Not because I was nervous, because my father taught me something important. When people believe they are in control, they reveal the most. The ballroom became quiet. The conversation stopped. The soft music disappeared. Everyone turned toward Richard. He stood there with a confident smile, holding a glass of champagne in one hand. Behind him was a large screen displaying the logo of Carter Medical Center, the same logo that replaced my father's name years ago, the same company my family believed belonged to them. Richard looked around the room. My friends, tonight is not only about love. Tonight is about legacy. I almost smiled when I heard that word, legacy, because I knew something he didn't. A legacy is not created by changing a name on a building. It is created by the people who built the foundation. Richard continued. For more than 20 years, this organization has grown from a small family clinic into one of the most respected healthcare groups in the state. People clapped. My mother smiled proudly. She looked at him like he had built everything alone. But I knew the truth. I knew the old photographs, the old records, the original contracts, the handwritten notes from my father. Richard had expanded the building, but my father created the foundation. And foundations have a way of surviving storms. Then Richard said something that made the entire room pay attention. Tonight, I have an exciting announcement. The screen behind him changed. A picture of a new hospital campus appeared. Next year, Carter Medical Center will begin construction on a $40 million healthcare facility. The room filled with applause. My mother looked emotional. Several investors nodded. People whispered about how impressive it was. But I noticed something else. 3 people in the room did not clap. The company's financial advisor, the attorney sitting near the front table, and me, because I knew that announcement was impossible. Not without my approval. Not without the trust agreement. Not without the signatures Richard didn't know existed. The room thought they were watching a celebration. I knew they were watching the final minutes before a collapse. After Richard finished his speech, people gathered around him. Everyone wanted to congratulate him. Your vision is incredible. This is going to change healthcare. You built something amazing. I stood quietly near the back, watching, listening, learning. Then my mother walked toward me. This time, she wasn't pretending to be kind. Emma, I don't know what game you are playing, but you need to stop. I looked at her. What game? She lowered her voice. You came here knowing this was important to Richard. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because after 9 years, she still believed I was the problem. Mom, I came because I received an invitation. She crossed her arms. Don't act innocent. That sentence hurt more than I expected, because a small part of me, a very small part, still wanted my mother to see me, to recognize me, to say, I was wrong. But instead, she looked at me like I was a threat. She said, You always wanted something from this family. I stayed silent because I knew the truth. I didn't want anything from them. I had spent 9 years building a life without them. The only thing I wanted was for the truth to finally stand in the same room as the lies. Then something unexpected happened. A woman approached me. An older woman. Someone I recognized immediately. Her name was Susan Miller. She had been my father's office manager for 18 years. The woman who used to bring me hot chocolate when I visited the clinic as a child. She touched my arm. Emma? I turned around. Susan. Her eyes became emotional. I knew it was you. We hugged. And for the first time that night, someone looked at me like I belonged. She whispered, Your father would be proud. Those words almost broke me, because I had spent years wondering if my father would have been disappointed, if he would have blamed me for leaving, if he would have wanted me to fight harder. Susan looked toward the stage. Then she said something that changed the entire direction of the night. Richard doesn't know, does he? I looked at her. Know what? She smiled sadly. That your father protected you. I froze. Because Susan knew. She knew about the documents. She knew about the trust. She knew exactly why I was standing there. Before I could ask more, she handed me a small envelope. I kept this for 9 years. I looked at it. My name was written on the front, in my father's handwriting. My hands started shaking. because I knew that handwriting. I had seen it on birthday cards, school notes, little messages he left on the kitchen table. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a letter. Only 2 pages. But those 2 pages carried 9 years of silence. The first line said, "Emma, if you are reading this, it means the people who promised to protect our family may have forgotten what family means." I stopped breathing for a moment because my father knew. He knew something could happen. He knew I might be pushed away, and he prepared for it. I read the letter quietly. My father explained that he created the Carter Family Trust on March 14, 2016. He wrote that his goal was never to control the company. His goal was to protect the values behind it. He wrote, "Money can build hospitals, but only character can heal people." I had to look away for a moment, because those were exactly the words he used to tell me when I was a child. Susan watched me. Then she said, "There's more." I looked at her. "What?" She pointed toward the stage. "Richard is about to make another announcement." I looked up. Richard was returning to the microphone. This time, he looked even more confident. He held a folder. A very familiar folder. The kind used for official business documents. "My friends," he announced, "before we continue this celebration, I want to introduce a new ownership structure for Carter Medical Center." My heart stopped because I knew exactly what he was about to do. He was about to announce a future that did not belong to him. He continued, "Effective immediately, my family will maintain full control of the company moving forward." The room applauded. My mother smiled. People celebrated. And nobody noticed the person standing in the back of the room. The person who had the authority to stop everything. Me. Then Richard looked directly at me. For the first time all night, he recognized me. His expression changed. Only slightly, but enough. He walked toward me. "Emma." I looked at him calmly. "Richard." He smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was a warning. "What are you doing here?" I answered, "Attending a wedding." He leaned closer. "You need to understand something. This is not your world anymore." I looked at the ballroom, the hospital logo, the guests, the people who believed his story. Then I looked back at him. "You are right." He seemed surprised. I continued, "It isn't the world you think it is." For the first time, Richard looked uncertain. Only for a second. But it was there. Fear. Because sometimes people don't fear losing money. They fear losing the illusion that they were ever in control. At 8:15 p.m., dinner was served. At 8:30 p.m., the official announcement was scheduled. And at 8:29 p.m., I received a message from Daniel Brooks. It contained only one sentence. "The legal team is ready. Do you want to proceed?" I looked around the room. I saw my mother laughing. I saw Richard celebrating. I saw relatives who ignored me for 9 years enjoying the success my father created. Then I looked at my father's letter again. The last sentence was underlined. "Never fight to prove you are right. Build something so strong that the truth speaks for itself." I typed one word back. "Proceed." And that was the moment everything changed. Because 1 minute later, the people who removed my name from their family story were about to discover something they never expected. They had not invited a forgotten daughter to the wedding. They had invited the owner. At exactly 8:30 p.m., Richard tapped the microphone again. The room became quiet. Everyone turned toward him. My mother stood beside him, smiling. The photographer moved closer. The lights became brighter. It was the perfect moment for a family announcement. At least, that was what they believed. Richard opened the folder in his hand. "I want everyone here tonight to witness an important moment for Carter Medical Center." I watched him carefully. Not with anger. Not with hatred. Just observation. Because after 9 years, I had learned something. The loudest person in the room is usually trying the hardest to control the story. Richard continued. "Tonight, we officially announce that the Carter family will continue leading this organization for future generations." The crowd applauded. My mother held his arm. She looked proud. But I noticed something. Her fingers were tight around his sleeve. She was nervous. Maybe she didn't know everything. Maybe even she didn't understand the entire picture. Richard turned toward the screen. A presentation appeared. Future plans. New buildings. Expansion numbers. Investment projections. A beautiful presentation. A perfect illusion. Then he said, and as part of this transition, we will be restructuring ownership. That was the moment I stood up. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just calmly. The room noticed. One person. Then another. The whispers started. Richard stopped speaking. My mother looked at me. Emma? Her voice had confusion in it. Not anger. Not yet. I walked toward the front. Every step felt strangely peaceful. Because for 9 years, I had imagined this moment. I imagined shouting. I imagined tears. I imagined telling everyone how badly they hurt me. But standing there, I felt none of that. I felt something different. Closure. I reached the stage. Richard looked uncomfortable. What are you doing? I looked at him. The same thing you were doing. He frowned. What does that mean? It means making an announcement. The room became completely silent. I looked toward the guests. My name is Emma Carter. A few people nodded. Some looked away. Some looked confused. I continued. 9 years ago, I was asked to leave my family's home because I refused to sign away my connection to my father's company. My mother immediately shook her head. Emma, don't do this. I looked at her. I'm not doing anything, Mom. I paused. I'm simply finishing a conversation that started 9 years ago. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then I turned toward Richard. On March 14, 2016, Michael Carter created the Carter Family Trust. Richard's expression changed. Only slightly. But I saw it. Recognition. Fear. I continued. The agreement protected the original ownership rights connected to Carter Medical Center. The room became uncomfortable. People looked at each other. Richard laughed softly. A nervous laugh. Emma, I don't know what you think you are saying, but this is not the time. I looked at him. Actually, Richard, this is exactly the time. I reached into my bag. I removed a small folder. Not expensive. Not impressive. Just a simple folder. But inside were documents that carried more weight than any luxury item in that room. I handed copies to the attorney sitting near the front. He looked through them. Then he stood. I can confirm these documents are authentic. The room changed instantly. Because people believe confidence. But they believe paperwork even more. The attorney continued. According to the agreement signed in 2016, Emma Carter has controlling ownership rights after the company reaches specific expansion conditions. Richard stared at him. What? The attorney continued. The conditions were met on September 2, 2025. Silence. Complete silence. My mother looked at me. Emma. Her voice was different now. Softer. Almost like the daughter she had lost suddenly became visible again. I looked at her. I didn't take anything from you. She looked down. I never wanted your money. I pointed toward the documents. I only protected what Dad built. Richard reacted exactly how I expected. First came anger. He stepped forward. This is ridiculous. His voice became louder. You think you can walk in here after 9 years and take control? I stayed calm. I am not taking control. I looked around the room. I already had it. That sentence changed everything. People started whispering. Investors moved closer. The same people who had ignored me earlier were suddenly interested. Richard's face turned red. You planned this. I shook my head. No. I looked at him. You did. He froze. Because he knew what I meant. The risky loans. The false confidence. The expansion plans without proper approval. The decisions made without understanding the foundation. I continued. You spent 9 years building an image. I paused. My father spent 20 years building something real. Then Richard tried something different. Manipulation. His anger disappeared. His voice became softer. Emma, listen. He walked closer. We are family. I almost smiled. Because that was the first time all night he used that word. Family. Only when he needed something. He continued. Your mother loves you. I looked at my mother. She looked away. That told me everything. Richard lowered his voice. We can work this out privately. I answered. That is what you wanted 9 years ago. He looked confused. I continued. You wanted private decisions, private documents, private conversations. I looked around the room, but the truth deserves witnesses. Then my mother started crying. Real tears. Or at least they looked real. She stepped forward. Emma, I was wrong. The entire room watched. I should have listened to you. For a moment, I saw my mother. Not the woman who pushed me away. Not the woman who chose someone else over me. Just my mother. The woman who used to make pancakes with me on Sunday mornings. The woman who held my hand when I was afraid of thunderstorms. And that was the hardest part. Because forgiveness is not difficult when you stop caring. It is difficult when you still love someone who hurt you. I looked at her. I waited 9 years to hear that. She cried harder. I'm sorry. I nodded. I believe you are. She looked surprised. But sorry does not erase consequences. The attorney stepped forward again. He explained the final details. The company valuation at that time was approximately $12.8 million. The debt restructuring would take 90 days. The new leadership transition would begin immediately. The unnecessary expansion project would be paused. The employees would be protected. The original mission of Carter Medical Center would return. I didn't fire everyone. I didn't destroy the company. I didn't do what they expected, because revenge was never my goal. Restoration was. After the announcement, the room slowly emptied. The celebration was over. The music stopped. The flowers remained. The beautiful decorations remained. But the illusion was gone. I found myself standing near the old photograph displayed in the hallway. It was a picture of my father outside the original clinic. The same picture that had been removed years ago. Susan walked beside me. You brought him back. I smiled. No. I touched the frame gently. He was never gone. She handed me something. A small wooden box. I opened it. Inside was my father's old watch. The one he wore every day. I thought Richard threw it away, I whispered. Susan smiled. Your father gave it to me before he died. He told me one day you would understand time differently. I held the watch in my hand, and for the first time in 9 years, I cried. Not because I was hurt, because I finally felt like I had come home. 3 months later, Carter Medical Center changed. The first decision I made was simple. We created a patient assistance program in my father's name. The first year, we helped 642 families receive medical support. We reopened the community clinic area. We brought back some of the original staff members. And on the wall, we placed my father's photograph again, not as a symbol of ownership, as a symbol of values. My relationship with my mother took time. Real healing does not happen in one conversation. There were difficult days. There were honest conversations. There were moments when we both had to accept what happened. But slowly, we rebuilt something. Not the same relationship. A new one. A stronger one. Because sometimes broken things cannot be repaired exactly as they were. Sometimes they have to be rebuilt differently. Looking back, I don't remember the night my mother asked me to leave. I remember the night I stopped needing permission to belong. I learned that people can remove your name from a wall. They can ignore your voice. They can rewrite the story. But they cannot erase the foundation you built. Because the truth does not need to scream. It only needs time. If this story reminded you to know your worth, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, drop a comment, and I will see you in the next one.